Welcome back to the TOWKA podcast. Today I am joined by Victor Altamirano. He is a mixed martial artist in the UFC, a trainer, a coach, and he's a friend of mine, of course. Victor, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's glad to be here. I'm happy we finally connected. It's been a while since we talked, even as friends and practitioners. I'm glad we're getting this chance right now.
Yeah, man. So, for the people who don't follow you, go ahead and just give us a background story about how you got into mixed martial arts.
Well, I've always liked sports. I've always been very active. And when I was little, I joined a football, soccer. And that's because that's what, everybody around my family liked and did. And when I did it, I didn't really like having to lose all the time. I feel like I barely got any play. I feel like I was a very small role in what would happen, and we would lose very often. And I just wanted to play a bigger role on the outcome. I wanted to make sure that what I was working towards, I got to execute and I got some game time. And so then I realized that the best way to do that is not to participate in team sports. And so I started doing Taekwondo when I was 12, and I just stuck with it ever since.
So, what kind of like led you to jujitsu and then to like UFC? What was kind of like the turning point for you, or your direction?
So when I graduated high school, I wanted to pursue, a college education. I wanted to go into linguistic anthropology, and so I went to study at UNT in Denton. And to accomplish that, I moved to Fort Worth so that I would be closer and the commute would be a lot less time. It's still a long drive from Fort Worth to Denton, but in comparison to where I was living, it would have been way closer. So I started doing that, and when I moved to Fort Worth, I hadn't been away. I had been away from my Taekwondo school for a few weeks, and so I wanted to continue training. I wanted to continue training the martial arts, and I saw this as a big opportunity to not go into another Taekwondo school, to try another school, another martial arts that I had not dabbled in. And so I went to Peak Performance, and it was in Richland Hills at the time. They had that location and the one in Keller. And so I went and I wanted to study something I didn't know about. And I started jujitsu and Muay Thai right there. And it was very challenging, something very different. If you're a striker or if you're a grappler, if you only ever done one of those, to transition into the other discipline has its own challenges and has its own perspective changes that you must do and tweak inside your head and your body when it comes to how you approach it mentally and when it comes to how you approach it physically. You have to be able to execute those. And so I started doing that. I would train a lot. I would train as much as I could. I stopped going to school because they just got too expensive and my major wasn't going to make me money. So I just kept doing it and I would help out in the fight camp. They would have fight camps. I remember my friend Daniel, Kenny, some of our other people were fighting, and I was there so often that I was part of the people who would help them get ready. And I remember one time Daniel, Daniel Lemons, he told me, "Why don't you just fight? You should fight." And so I said, "Yeah, let's do it. I'm here, and I do spend all this time in training with the people who fight. I might as well do what I'm spending all this time getting ready for, which I'm not getting ready for anything." And then I just took my first fight, and that's how I got started.
So, from day one, when you stepped into the through the doors, to today, how many years has that been for you?
Oh man, to jujitsu or just martial arts in
Through
general?
through mixed martial arts in general. Yeah.
To mixed martial arts in general, I would say since I was 12. That is the first introduction. Even though I wasn't training mixed martial arts at that point, I was training a martial arts that later led me to other disciplines. So that would be 20, 21 years. 21 years, so 2 decades.
And and
Yeah.
in those 21 years, what would you say have been the biggest lessons that you've learned about yourself and about the struggle and the pain and suffering you go through in the sport?
About myself, I would say that I learned the importance of consistency and discipline. There are many things that you may not be really good at first. There's a plethora of things that you don't know about. And so there's so many things that may spike your interest and you may want to try out. And sometimes you get lucky and you're naturally good at it. You don't struggle and you jump right in and you just go. And sometimes it's not the case. Sometimes it's rough, it's hard. It seems like you can't grasp the concepts. It seems like your body can't physically do the things. It can be very frustrating. And in any sport, in any endeavor, really, you give yourself goals to promote yourself as, I'm making progress. And at times, those goals are not achieved. Goals that you give yourself to do. And the most difficult part is achieving those goals and failing all over again and having to try again. But the thing that I learned the most about myself is that whether you are naturally gifted or not, if you just keep showing up, you will outwork most of the people, even those who are naturally gifted. You just have to stay consistent with what you do, how you do it, and the most difficult part, enjoying it. You have to stay consistent with enjoying it.
Would you say that as a coach, seeing it from a different perspective, like seeing people grow and get better in their own journeys, has given you like an even more joy or a bigger like fulfillment than just being an athlete in it?
I would definitely say so. I would say that I actually started teaching before I started competing. When I did my Taekwondo school, when I went there, my first instructor, Samuel Perez, he was very adamant about promoting people that also put emphasis on teaching. In order to be ranked up, not only did you have to know what you were supposed to know, but you had to have certain time spent teaching. Because if you can do something correctly, you know how to do it. You know when you know something. You don't really grasp if you understand something or not until you're trying to teach it to someone else. And one of the biggest gifts that he offered me was that knowing the difference between knowing something and understanding something. And the best way to test that is to teach it to somebody else. If you can't pass the knowledge down to someone else who is also inspired to learn, then how are you going to grasp the understanding of what is it that you are learning? So it is very important for not just me, but the sport in general, and really anything that you do, whatever you happen to be good at or whatever you happen to have spent a lot of time at, the best service you can do is to teach that, to pass it down, to give it back, to help those who are just now inspired to begin that. And in return, you will receive the gift of understanding what is it exactly that you're trying to achieve and how is it that you're achieving. And I think the biggest gift of teaching is, how do I maintain inspiration in these people? Because if you can't do that, how are you maintaining that in yourself?
Do you let's just switch gears a little bit going into the UFC, because not many people on the face of the earth can relate to walking out to a crowd, being in an octagon with another professional trained fighter. Is that a feeling that you had to get comfortable with like right away, or did you over time in your career like get more used to the fans and the atmosphere and everything else? Like how talk kind of about how your mindset is going into each fight and then being out there in the octagon, going through the motions and fighting somebody.
I think everybody takes a different approach when it comes to performing, and how is it that you need to perform the best, and the mentality that you have to have going into whatever performance you're about to take. Um, I, when I went to Taekwondo, I competed a lot in tournaments. So I was used to the regulations, the formalities, the show up early. This is what we're training. This is how you warm up. You're competing. People are watching you. You are the center where people are paying attention. It was at a way smaller scale, but it was when you're little, that smaller scale does feel big. And I was already accustomed to tune that out, to just focus on what I was doing because you're doing something important, and you would always have distractions. Even when you're at the gym and you're not competing, you're just going for the sake of the enjoyment that you go. Even then, you have distractions, and you don't really pay attention to those distractions because there's not a show, right? But there are distractions, and just being able to practice that in the gym, and then you get good at it. So whenever you go to a show or a tournament, then you're a little better at it, and so forth and so on. And mentally walking into the cage, regardless of the amount of people that are there or not, you are there to perform a task. You are there because you have dedicated a lot of time and effort into doing this particular task so well that you were asked to do it in front of these people. So you have to take that as a service. You have to give these people what they came to see. And what they came to see is the years that not just you but your opponent have spent in this passion, in this sport, in this performance that you're doing, in this fight that you're doing. And the best thing that you can do at that point is just give it your all. Just show up and show out.
So I've been asked over the course of my jujitsu career by other people when they find out, like, what advice would you give to me if I want to just start, or how do I start? I'm sure because you've been doing it a lot longer than I have, you've come across people just like that. What advice have you given to people that you've crossed paths with when they are intimidated or don't know where to start? It could be in jujitsu or taekwondo or whatever. But what have you kind of like wisdom have you given to people when they've asked you about mixed martial arts and starting their own journey?
You know, there's a lot of things that I've told them because many people will tell me that, and I'll just listen until they tell me why. I listen until they tell me why they haven't. Right. So when I hear why they haven't, then I tell them the many perspectives that I've seen other people who did have that and started it anyway. And it boils down to how inspired are you to do it? How much do you want to do it? Because it doesn't matter why you want to do it. If you want to do it, you're gonna go and do it, right? And the many things that people get, I'm guessing, scared or hesitant about is not looking dumb or not having time or feeling like they're out of shape or they're too old or they're not going to do well because they don't have the flexibility or the strength and what have you. Just a lot of other people have different many reasons in their head why they shouldn't do it or they can't do it or they want to but they don't know. And so what I tell them is that you just have to do it. It doesn't matter at what skill you think you will ever achieve. Any time you spend on it is a contribution to the sport. It's a contribution to other practitioners. It's a contribution to the world that you live in. There are people at the gym who never compete, but that's not the important part. The important part is that when you are in class and it's time to get around, they're right there for you and they give you a good round. They've never competed in their life, but they do it so much because they like it. They give you a good round, right? So don't be hesitant to contribute, and don't look at it as something that you should or shouldn't do or can and can't do. Look at it as something that you're interested in and you want to contribute because you practicing it contributes to it.
So give us kind of like an insight into your preparation, like your day-to-day life when you're training for a fight. Just kind of talk about that a little bit.
So when I'm training for a fight, obviously we have a date, so we have an opponent, we have something, we have a goal, we have something that we're going towards. And we begin, of course, we're making sure that the weight's good, the diet's well, everything's on track, the opponent is assessed correctly. We know what the game plan is. Every opponent has a slightly different game plan. And so we watch them and see what we need to work on, what do we need to drill. What is it that we need to do to use reps upon reps upon reps? Because that is really what it's at. You're not going to be good at something you don't practice. And to defeat a particular opponent with particular moves and particular techniques that they're also good at, you have to drill particular techniques. that throughout your life you've been training already, but now you're going to focus on them. And so we just work on that. I wake up, I go run, I go train for 2 to 3 hours, and I do that every day.
So what do you, when you're not training and you're not fighting, what do you like to do for fun outside of all that?
For fun. So that's what I do for fun. So even when I'm not training or fighting, I do that anyway. But for fun, in general, like if I was to say, what do I do for fun that does not include that? I enjoy playing music. I enjoy playing the cello. I enjoy I enjoy to travel. I love traveling. I love seeing different people, different cultures, different countries. Just get a dose of perspective. I think that when you get so dialed in and a goal that's important to you, you forget that there's a big world out there. You forget that if you go outside, the sky's way bigger than any endeavor that you may think you're doing. You know, the world as a whole is way more important than anything you think it's important. So after being so dialed in and focused in one particular goal, I like to go into somewhere where I've never been with people who I don't really understand so that I can grasp how big the world is and how important everything else is after being so focused on one thing.
So I've asked like every person I've come across, whether I've been on the podcast or I know them personally, who are in mixed martial arts, have you had to use your skills outside of the mats? Now, have you ever been in a situation that you've had to at least uh, disengage yourself or stabilize the person who's trying to hurt you or other people around you? Have you been in a situation like that in your life?
No, no, nothing like that. There was one time that I went to a bar and a fight broke out, and everybody was swinging to everybody. And I think the extent of what I did is I just avoided getting hit by just moving. But I think everybody who would have been sober would have been able to do that. I didn't, it wasn't that. It wasn't like someone was attacking me or I had to defend somebody. Luckily, I've never had to resort to that. But it is important to stay observant. Just because you know a skill, just because you know how to fight, you can avoid it by being observant. You can avoid it by just paying attention to your surroundings. And if you do that, you're less likely to even get into the point in which combat has been engaged.
Do you feel like everybody should at least have a little bit of knowledge about how to defend themselves, no matter what the martial art is? Like, is that something you'd want in your back pocket, just going through life these days?
Yeah, most definitely. I think everybody should be able to start a fire and defend themselves, just basic survival things, because we don't exist in this world alone. And unfortunately, other people are the cause of other harm. So you just have to be ready to protect yourself or, the people you care about. And well, again, one of the things that is very important is not just the skills of combat themselves, but just making sure that you're observant and aware of your surroundings. That alone just goes a long way. You may not have ever trained in your life, but you can throw a punch. Most people, maybe not correctly, but they can inflict damage. Whether they do it technically correct or not, they can inflict damage. And then if you add that with just being ready because you pay attention, you already have the heads up.
Now, I obviously remember, I think I've gotten to roll against you twice. I think they were both when I was a white belt. I think you were still a brown belt, maybe a black belt at the time. It was extremely intimidating and very scary for anybody when they go up against higher belts who've been doing it for a long time. But I knew that everybody's been through it. It's just part of building the foundation, gaining that level of survival, and just continuing to show up, like you said earlier. For anybody out there watching this who may be in the very, very beginning of their jujitsu journey, they're just getting beat up all the time. They don't feel like they're getting any better. What advice would you give to somebody out there watching this?
I would say just wait until someone new comes into the school. It's going to be almost impossible for you to feel like you're making progress because one, you're new, So you're already at the bottom. Two, as you're learning, so are your other people. Your teammates are learning too. So whatever your professor's teaching you, your teammates are watching it too, and they're keeping the tabs on you. They know where to go. They know what you're getting good at, and they know how to shut it down. So just keep going at it. Stay persistent, and don't be a bully, but pay attention to when someone enters the gym for the first time. Go with that person. Don't be a bully, but realize how much you've learned, because that is when you realize it the most. Again, it's going to be almost impossible to see how much or if any you're getting better, because everybody's going at the same time, everybody's growing, everybody's getting better around you. So it is difficult, and it's very discouraging, because you're like, damn, I just can't get this. I just get beat over and over again. It happens. But you start understanding it more. You start understanding your partners. You go with new people, and you realize the gap that you haven't seen that existed between when you started and what you're doing now. And if you get tapped a lot, I didn't tap anybody for almost 1 year of my training. I was getting tapped all the time, and I also points. I started out pulling guard a lot because I was smaller than everyone else, so it was difficult for me to get a takedown. So I was on bottom almost all the time, and I didn't tap anybody for about a year. And that was my first tap. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because I just put myself in a mindset where, okay, I'm going to lose. I'm going to go today. I know I'm going to get tapped. I'm not only a white belt, but I'm also very small. My goal is, how many times can I get tapped? How many times can I get tapped in a round? If it's 5, that sucks. If it goes to 3, if it goes down to 3, that sucks. But I'm able to just immediately go. Like, I got tapped. We'll go again. I got tapped. I go again. Eventually your partner will get tired. Eventually you're going to catch them. Eventually pace, volume is what's going to win you if you're the person who's not very technical. But you build up on that. You realize, okay, if I go faster, I get tapped twice instead of 5 times if I just up my pace. Or when I play this particular guard, I get more points, or I don't get tapped at all. So I'm just going to do that more. Whatever's working for you, as small as it could be, do that over and over again. Focus on that. And then build up on it. Then you start not only not getting tapped, but also getting a takedown, or also getting a sweep or some points. And then you start inserting more danger to your game.
Are you currently training for a future fight, or are you in a training camp right now, or what's the status right now with where you're at?
Right now we're just training normally, as usual. Nothing, not getting ready for a fight or anything, but we're just training constantly all the time, as usual, routine, just to stay ready. You never know.
And Victor, where can people find you on social media if they want to reach out, they want to ask you questions or advice? Um, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Vic_Altamirano. That's my last name. And that's where you can find me the most. If you have my phone number, then you probably talk to me often. And that's where I'll be. That's where you can find me. Ask me questions. If you want a tutorial video, I'll make one. If you have any questions upon regarding anything, just hit me up and let me know.
Well, guys, I'll put that in the description. Victor, I want to thank you for your time and for all the advice and wisdom that you've given through this video. If you guys enjoyed this video with Victor, please let me know down in the comments. Give it a huge thumbs up. If you didn't check out the last podcast episode or the last video, the links will be in the description below. And until next time, I'll see you guys on the other side.